Absolute bedlam. Absolute bedlam. Absolute bedlam. Talking about topics and stuff. Absolute bedlam. Absolute bedlam. Absolute Bedlam podcast. Who? What? Where? Why?
Hello and welcome to a special edition of Absolute Bedlam podcast. We've got a UK US sort of thing election going on in keeping with the time sensitive nature of these things actually happening in the real world. So tonight I've got Man Talks, I've got Mark, and I've got Angry Bootneck, Matt. And it's good to put you both together. Two political minds, not like myself, who is just a bimbling idiot with a B logo. And going to let you two thrash it out. But first things first, Mark, how did you enjoy your holiday recently? Because I am fascinated by the eastern side of the world. So how did you enjoy the Philippines?
Okay. Yeah, it's awesome. I mean, I go quite often. My wife is from the Philippines. I love Asia in general. We usually go to a few different places. I've been to Hong Kong, Kuala Lumpur, Vietnam and stuff like that. But I just spent 4 weeks in the Philippines. But we toured. We went a bit on the outskirts this time. I spent some time with a little mountain tribe. I met a 170-year-old woman that does hand poke tribal tattoos, which got tattooed. I just love the simple life over there. Like what we're about to discuss now, aren't we? Politics. I think in the Western world, we just spend half our time. We were just talking about Twitter, just arguing with each other all the time. It's nice just to go back to basics. But I love that part of the world. I really do.
Love it. And before we get into it, Matt, have you got any plans to go on any holidays anytime soon?
I'm going to Disneyland next month. In fact, no, this month now. No, next month. 3 days yet, innit? I'm going to Disneyland in 2-3 weeks. 2.5 weeks.
I love Disneyland.
Have you? What I don't get is the difference between Disneyland and Disney World. Is it Disneyland or Disney World that's in Florida?
So are you going to the one in California or Florida?
No, I'm going to Florida because a mate of mine and his wife and
kids
that's
Disney
going.
World. Yeah, that's the one I went to a couple of years ago with my nieces.
So I'm going to Disney World. That's my holiday, which is I was best man at his wedding. He's one of my mates for like 30 odd years. So I'm meeting him, his wife, and his nipper out there for 10 days. So that's my holiday this year. Typically, I do go back to the UK once a year, though. I don't know if I'll squeeze it in this year because I've been working long hours as well. We'll see. If I do, I'll try and get back for Christmas, I think.
I want a picture of you, Matt, on a roller coaster looking sad, because that is not the place I would expect you to go on holiday. I don't know why, but it just doesn't fit in my head.
I prefer one with Mickey Mouse or something.
Yeah.
Or Goofy.
Well, he's my mate for years, so I'm going to see him, really.
Fair enough.
I'm hoping I've heard the Epcot Centre out there's got like pubs from all different countries in the world, so I'm hoping I can just go and get pissed for a week while the wife and kid go on the rides. We'll see.
There we go. Have you seen the picture that turned into a massive meme of Billy Corgan from the Smashing Pumpkins on a roller coaster looking sad?
No, but I can imagine. Ever since you get, again, once you hit 40, everything starts to go downhill, doesn't it? And I do remember getting on a roller coaster about 3 years ago. So I'll have been, 41? And the experience was infinitely less pleasant than when I was 19 and I was going on the corkscrew at Alton Towers or something. It's not something older men should be doing, in my experience.
Fair enough. Awesome. Right, so we're going to do a UK election. So Mark's going to give us 5 policies that we can then vote in the comments on YouTube. And Matt's also going to give us 5 policies as to why he should become the leader. So bear with me on this, because this is a very new thing that I'm doing on the podcast. It's not very common that I get to do general elections on here. So hopefully it will all come to plan and it will all go according to plan, and we'll have a great time and a good laugh. And we'll try not to slag each other off in the process like in real life, where the Houses of Parliament just turns into one massive diss track and people talking over each other. So right. So I don't know if we want to flip a coin. Who wants to go first? completely up to you. Should we do it alphabetical?
Well, are we going to alternate each one or round off all our five?
Yeah, so if we do the first policy...
Probably alternate. You don't want to listen to me for like half an hour straight.
Yeah.
At least alternate a little bit.
Let's alternate it. Yeah, cool. Right, so who wants to go first? Anyone?
Go on then, I'll go first.
Go on then.
It seems we'll go clockwise. That'll work, won't it?
Yeah, let's give that a go.
Right, well, I didn't really think too much about policies per se. I thought we were just going to have a bit of an argument basically about politics. If I was to pick 5, I think I could do that quite easily, because to me it's glaringly obvious what's gone wrong in the last sort of 10 years. Well, 25 really, if you want to get down to the meat of it, because I think we seem to be about the same age, me and Mark. And I don't think anybody who was growing up in the early 90s can look around now and say, oh yeah, it's gone really well. Things have got better. I think objectively they haven't. So if I could pick 5 things that I think had fixed them, obviously the big one, which everybody is aware of, which is why it was the central pin of the Conservatives' manifesto, would be fixing the immigration system. And I think that any working class person, because it's always us that this burden falls upon, is aware that that's the single biggest issue that's been assailing us for the last 10 years. The fact that working class people can no longer get a council house, affordable housing, get a job that actually pays the bills and makes them comfortable, or use the healthcare system probably, because the NHS funding hasn't decreased. It's only ever gone up. It's a misnomer when people say, oh, the Tories have gutted the NHS. They're not spending enough money. It's a black hole. I think immigration is the single biggest policy to the United Kingdom, to the well-being of the working classes, bar nothing else. And I think it's obvious. I think it touches every aspect that I can possibly think of that a working class person's interested in. So what we've got: housing, wages, can't get a school place for your kids, can't get a dentist appointment, can't get a doctor's appointment. Even the little things like going to the bloody cinema or going for a drive, you can't do it because it's a nightmare. There's traffic jams that you didn't see in the 90s. We've let in, you might have heard recently, Richard Tice made a point that I think we've let in the 12 years the Conservatives have been in charge, more people than moved to the UK since the Norman Conquest. And like Tony Blair, it was literally like over 1,000 years we've seen that many people move to the UK in 12. And it's unsustainable, and I fully understand how it's a difficult conversation for people to have, because in a real political theatre, the second you bring it up, it turns into name-calling. So all of the Tories, cowards that they are, have completely shied away from having this debate because they're scared to bring it up. They don't even want to talk about immigration because they know the second they bring it up, someone will say racist, sexist, homophobe. Don't know what the last 2 have got to do with it, but those 3 sort of come out together. And it needs to be addressed. So my policy would be fix it. Fix it by using the Royal Navy to police the seas and make sure nobody arrives who shouldn't be. You can open further avenues for legal migration, but you have to get a grip on the fact that there's people who are unvetted. I'd go so far as to say you can do this by using existing legislation, because you can tie it to a national security issue. The amount of people that have been molested, murdered, blew up, scattered across the side of the Manchester Evening News Arena as a direct result of an unfettered migration policy is demonstrable. And it numbers in the thousands. People that have had their lives torn apart by it. So it needs fixing, and I'd fix it by doing that. I'd approach it as a national security issue. I'd leave the European Convention on Human Rights. I would tell everybody who's trying to come in, if you come in illegally, you will be instantly deported. And then I would start I'd massively shy away from the policies of the hard right on this, because I've always said, though, you can see, you've been watching my channel for 4 or 5 years on and off, right? At no point have I ever sided with them, and I don't support any idea of ridiculous race-based repatriation. The simple position I take is that if we just enforced existing laws correctly, it would fix all of these big issues. If you got rid of 500,000 miscreants and ne'er-do-wells in the space of 6 months, that'd take pressure off absolutely everything, from the housing market and the healthcare system to the roads and the schools and anything else you want to think about. I think it's the single biggest issue, and I think it needs fixing, and I think you can fix it using existing legislation without going down the path of sounding like a raving lunatic and calling for deporting people that have never hurt a fly. So that's the central thing I'd focus around.
Okay. Mark, to respond?
Well, we going okay. I'll just respond for some of the points that Matt made there. 100% agree with you, Matt, that no one wants illegal immigration. I'm completely against illegal immigration. I also agree with you the fact that we can make it easier for people to come over here legally, but it's also important to know that illegal migration makes up about 4% of migration as a whole. It's a very, very small amount. The majority of migration into this country is students and immigrant workers. Now, when we come to the infrastructure and the fact that basically this whole country is crumbling, public services are terrible. You said potholes, doctors' surgeries, all these things, I will put down to the last 14 years of Tory government. They have not invested in any of these things. They haven't taken the benefits of migrant workers. Migrant workers bring extra tax money. They haven't spent that money on public services, on the infrastructure. They haven't spent any of it. The Labour government during the 90s and the 2000s brought in a lot of immigration from the EU. But if you look at the stats back in 2010, NHS waiting lists at a record low, NHS satisfaction at a blatant low, dentist appointments, all these things, public services, education, everything was working well in 2010 because the previous Labour government invested that money they got from immigrant workers, that extra tax money. All of the problems, all of the fundamental problems in the UK are down to 14 years of Tory government cutting all public services, taking your tax money, cutting back. And where is that tax money going? It's going to their donors. We've dealt with 14 years of the most corrupt government this country has ever seen. And that is why we are having crumbling public services. They have also designed a country where we rely on immigrant workers. I don't like this model. One of the biggest things that I have with the Tory party is back in 2011 when they took rid of the nursing bursaries. We used to train British citizens for free if they wanted to become nurses. They took that away. So now we solely rely on immigrant nurses coming over here. They've designed this. The Tory party have designed this. At least the previous Labour government actually trained British citizens to become nurses for free. And that's what we need to do. We need to look after our own. And as we'll find, as we discuss here, what I always say between people that have different politics, left or right, we essentially all want the same things. We want a well-run country. We want good jobs for our kids. We just generally have different ways to go into that. But illegal immigration, I'm 100% with you. And the majority of the country is. But the fact we've had 14 years of a Tory government that has designed a country which now solely relies on immigrant working, and we need to reverse that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I totally agree on the nurses. It's a bit annoying if you're not actually very, very woke and you're expecting me to be a conservative apologist, because then we probably won't disagree on as much as we think we do. Because I certainly
oh no, I don't think you are. Everyone hates the Tories.
Yeah, I'm definitely not gonna. I've been calling Boris Johnson the albino jellyfish for the last 3 years. I hate the bloke. So yeah, I'm not going to defend them at all. I agree entirely on the nursing thing, because in Middlesbrough we've got I think it's the biggest hospital in Northern Europe, James Cook. And basically, when I was a kid, every girl who left school wanted to be a nurse. It's something that we just had people queuing up to do. And now all of a sudden they keep saying, yeah, and now they're saying, oh, we can't get any nurses. We've got to bring them over from Nigeria. I was like, well, you can, because there was about 500 girls in my school who wanted to be nurses. What are you talking about? So obviously some of it is down to mismanagement. But I feel as if that's an issue that probably all working class people, regardless of which side of the aisle they come from, can agree on, right? It's that we should be training our own people. We've got all these staggering statistics about 5-6 million people being NEETs, not in education, employment or training. And they're talking about how we have to bring nurses in from abroad. Like, it's complete lunacy. And we've got millions of people. And the one argument I've always hated from, like, you know, middle-class arseholes on Question Time is when they'll get up and say, oh, yeah, well, who's going to work in Pret? And I was like, me. Teenagers. Like, we've all done it. I'm sure you have. I'm sure everyone in this chat has. Like, we did shitty jobs when we were kids. It's what you do. This idea that we won't work in Pret or we won't work as a janitor or something, it's completely preposterous. It's a non-point. And I agree with you on that one. It is. We've got to use our training and our own people to get these jobs done. And at no point have I been blanket against immigration at all. But I feel like if you just went back to like 1992, you'd be there as well. There was immigrants moving to the UK. And I remember there was a couple moved to my school, you know, when I was in secondary school. A couple moved there while we were there. You know, a lad called Femi came over from Nigeria, I think it was. And there was a little Japanese lass called Yayoi came over. And these individual immigrants came over and they were vetted and they were there for a reason. And most importantly, they fit in and they integrated, because if you do it with a trickle, they do integrate because people like me play football with them and hang out with them. And when they grow up 10 years later, you've got a well-adjusted British immigrant kid and it's fine. I think where it went wrong is opening the floodgates. An element of it is impossible to avoid when you're living in the modern era and the entirety of the third world knows about the first world and they're all wanting to come here and you can't blame them for that either. But I think ultimately it boils down to basic optimism versus realism. And I think that we need to have quite aggressive policies to train our own, stop importing vast amounts of people to plug any of these deficiencies we've got, and roll it back a couple of decades to a trickle rather than the floodgates being opened. I don't think anything either of us said there is unreasonable.
So, Mark, did you want to continue with immigration or did you want to get a new policy out into the open?
Well, no, I mean, I think I've said everything I need to say on immigration. Immigration could be very, very useful. It brings in a hell of a lot of money. It does. And when you actually use that money and invest it in public services, it works. But like I said, we've had 14 years of the Tories that just take, and will bleed this country dry. That's all I've got to say on immigration. But I'll move on to another policy if I know it's Matt's turn, isn't it? It's Matt.
No, I started, mate. You can pull one out
it's
now.
up to you, Mark.
Okay. Well, yeah. Secondly, nationalisation. I do a heavy program of nationalisation. Utilities back under government control. We know what's going on with water rates and being absolutely bled dry by private companies. Especially, we need to start being self-sufficient with energy, tidal, solar panels, all this sort of stuff. We need to bring this under government control and be energy sufficient. But I'd also put housing under that. I think one of the biggest problems that we've had in this country, which started with Thatcher and was rolled out furthermore with Blair, was the selling off of council housing and the fact that housing is now in private hands. And this is one of the number one grievances in this country is housing is so expensive. Rents are so expensive because we have greedy landlords that bought up all that council housing and are bleeding us dry. I think housing is a right, is a human right. If you want to go and buy a big house, you got a load of money, all power to you. Go do it. But there needs to be affordable housing available for everyone, and we need to stop buying up council housing. All these derelict houses, we got millions of them. 1.5 million derelict housing in this country at the moment that no one's living in. Buy it up, get the councils to buy it up and get back to council housing, affordable housing. So yeah, I'd have under government control a lot more council housing and utility energy back into back away from private companies.
Yeah. What about you, Matt?
Well, funnily enough, that was the second one I was going to pick on. So mine was build more houses. It's one of my policies I was going to pick. Build more houses. So again, we can probably have some overlap here in that I disagree with the massive renationalisation of a lot of utilities, but I would entirely agree with the housing issue. But I think we'd approach it from different avenues. So I think that we definitely need to fast track planning and tax incentives to get people to build houses. I've got quite some experience with that working over here because California is famously bad for it in the last 10 years. everyone's been talking about San Francisco being in bits. So some rich bloke from San Francisco said, listen, I'm going to pay to build this massive public toilet. $5 million it'd cost. So he said, I'll pay, and we can just build this gigantic public toilet. It'll have showers and facilities for all the homeless people, and it'll be great. And a year later, they still haven't started it because the government are like, oh, no, hang on a sec. You've got to do this. You've got to apply for planning. You've got to get these permits. You've got to pay these lawyers. The amount of red tape that the state put in is what's ruined the housing, caused the housing crisis, because they like to, socialists will say that the reason the housing crisis exists is proof that the capitalist system doesn't work, saying that, the incentives to make builders and developers build stuff have failed. But it's a misnomer because they've put a hand on the scales. You don't have a really capitalist system for building houses. You have massive, massive amounts of red tape and legalese and lawyers and judges and civil servants getting involved to the point where you can't actually build houses. And as usual, we've got an endless pendulum going on. You've got the proper ruthless capitalists who will just build the worst house ever, sell you it, and then it'll collapse on you when you go on your treadmill in the garage or something. And then you've got the other side of it, which is nothing gets built because of legislation and everything has to go through the state. So I agree there, but I disagree about what causes it and how you fix it. I think that you have to prioritise housing for local people, for one, which again sounds like it's out of order, but they do it everywhere. They do it in Denmark. You can't buy a holiday home if you're just a random Chinese bloke. You can't rock up in Denmark and just buy 3 houses on the seafront. Again, I don't think that's a fascist policy. I think it's a reasonable policy when you've got finite space and finite resources and finite buildings. So I think you can prioritise local people and those that have paid into the system. And if you're a recent migrant or asylum seeker or anything like that, you don't get priority for a council house or something. That will just politely explain there's a queue and you're at the back of it. Again, don't think it's an unreasonable policy. Fast track planning, you can do that, right? You can do that easily. You could have a simple system in place where we get three locals sitting on a board from the town council. You do it, you have your meeting there in a day. We've all seen what they look like with Clarkson's farm, right? Room full of arseholes, sat at a big table. Get them in there, have a chat, bam. If you're happy and all the ducks are in a row, you stamp it, they're done, start building. I think we could use unused offices and high street properties. It's a good one. We could use that for housing. There's plenty of solutions, but I don't agree with the nationalisation programme. And I'll tell you why. I went to the National Rail Museum when I lived in York, and it totally blew my mind. This is like 12 years ago or something before I moved to the States, and I was a lot more... As I said, I'm an ex-lefty. I'm definitely not like a naturally conservative-leaning person because I'm socially liberal. People of our age grew up in the 90s. I think, like I said, I think Mark looks about my age. Slightly less better looking, but about the same age, right?
I just turned 40, so we're both in our 40s.
Yeah, I'm 43. Anyway, and, we were from an era where, all the stuff that they throw at you as soon as you start disagreeing with on politics in the real political theatre, not this reasonable conversation, is, sexist, racist, homophobe. And it's preposterous to me because my generation was brought up being told that, you don't choose these things. All of these immutable characteristics you can't help, so you shouldn't judge people for them. I don't think it's illogical to say any of that stuff and try and pin it somehow to bigotry. Like I said, things like prioritising people that have paid into a system when you've got a finite amount of housing, that seems reasonable. Like ultimately, the people that pay in should be the ones that benefit from it. And then to talk back again about the renationalisation, when I went to the National Rail Museum, I found out that was the first time I found out, from being a previous supporter of nationalisation, because the trains in the UK are absolutely shocking. That was when I found out quite how much debt they were in. When you go in there's a big thing on the wall about Thatcher, sort of slagging her off, but giving her credit where it was due, and they're saying essentially she didn't do it because she was a wizened old crone and she likes making people miserable. She did it because the rail system was in debt to the tune of something like, it was preposterous sum of money for the time. It was like £21 billion or something. And they were like, we physically can't afford a nationalised railway system. We had no money. So she sold it piecemeal to companies like Virgin, who then promptly started taking the piss out of the consumers again. So I'm not saying that they do a good job of it, but we were hemorrhaging money, so we sold the railway services. And ultimately, we've got finite time. I'll just say that. I do think history has proven that when you nationalise stuff, generally, there are some exceptions, but generally, they don't do a better job of running things than the private sector.
I mean, I'd have to disagree there. I mean, all the railways in Europe are mainly nationally run. They're cheap. They're extremely well run. They're obviously doing it right. France is a perfect example of energy right now. They have nationalized energy with the war in Ukraine and everything. They're the ones that are doing great with energy right now because they have a national energy source. So yeah, I mean, I'd have to disagree there. You can run it badly. You can do a terrible job of running it as a government, but there are plenty of fantastic examples across the whole of Europe, especially with rail, where it works fantastically.
If there's a way of finding out how to do it badly, we'll fucking find it. That's for sure. But like I said, I think you can pick notable exceptions. But I think if you look around the world, generally stuff like market efficiencies and investment and funding and consumer choice and all of the big sort of economist type stuff will disagree and say you're better off with the private sector than the public. I mean, think of it as an employee. Have you ever worked for the public sector? My first job leaving the military is working in the public sector for the council, and it's just unbelievable. Like, they get hamstrung by all of the litigation and the rules and the regulation. Are you telling me that you think someone like, I don't know, an employee of Elon Musk's, for example, is working less hard than your average council employee? Like, who do you think's actually putting the most effort? And if they go in the office for 8-hour day, who do you think's doing the most work? A bloke who works for X or Google, or a bloke who works for the council? Like, it's quite obvious, right? The public sector.
I'm just, all I'm doing is looking at the two examples where you have well-run railways in Europe that are cost effective. What is it now? £200 to get a return up to Manchester? You can fly to Egypt for that.
Yeah.
You know, I'm just looking at it as a whole. Their railways are nationalised. They're extremely cheap and well-run. Our railways are private. They're extremely expensive. Same with our utilities. Our utility bills are insanely expensive right now. Over in France, they have a national grid of nuclear energy and they're affordable. I mean, I'm just looking at the picture as a whole that it can be done very effectively.
It can be done. Well, and that's not an apples to apples comparison because France, right? The real issue there is France has got nuclear power plants. Do you remember when Cleggy, the absolute plank, Nick Clegg, was on TV and he was like, "Oh, there's no point in building any nuclear plants. They'll take 10 years," which was a classic example of why our politics is so bad, because our leaders have got this myopic thing where all they care about is the next election. So, you know, the old adage about society going great when men
that's going to be one of my policies coming up, so we'll get on to
nice
that
one.
further
Well,
on.
there you go. But, you know, so you're already more switched on than Nick Clegg. But what I'm getting at is, they say, right, societies grow great when men plant trees whose shades they'll never sit in. And that's what's gone wrong, is this myopic attitude where our leaders, Clegg proved it with his own mouth, like, there's no point doing that, it'll take 10 years. It's like, yeah, well, then in 10 years we'll have nuclear power. Like, it's pretty preposterous, that. The reason that's an issue with France is because they have them and we don't. We should have built some. And Nick Clegg just put
I couldn't agree more that proactive politics just doesn't happen in this country. It's sticking plasters. It's not looking towards the future.
Yeah. Well, we can draw a line under it and say that it's not incorrect to say that you can do it properly, but you can also do it badly. I think if we were to really sit and argue about it in the pub for 4 hours, you could probably pick as many examples of well-run public sector utilities, and I could pick as many examples of appalling ones and ones where the free market works properly. That's a debate that's raged for decades, right? The free market versus the public utilities.
Yeah, well, I mean, I want the free market there. It's just the pure essentials I want government owned. Healthcare, a certain amount of housing and utilities. I want the private sector to run wild with everything else, with your phones, with your cars, go crazy. But the pure, simple necessities of life, housing, healthcare, and utilities, I think need to be not for profit. That's my basic point.
Yeah, fair enough. Cool. Right, let's put a pin in this and we'll join the other Zoom meeting. And we've still got 3 more policies to chat about / argue about. Completely up to you what you do. I'm just here as a mediator, like I say. So, yeah, we'll stop this recording. We'll go into part 2. We'll probably play an ad. And, yeah, bear with us. And we'll be back in a sec. Cheers, guys.
Dorset, England's gateway to the sea. Legends tell of how travellers and wayfarers would navigate vast oceans to meet the natural beauty of the Jurassic coastline. As the centuries have passed, only their song remains. Absolute Bedlam are proud to be sponsored by Shanty Spirit, the taste of the Jurassic Coast.
And we're back. So, bit of continuity. The panes have switched a little bit, but it doesn't matter. It's all good. Right, so we've got 3 more policies. And then at the end, we're going to do like a sort of 30-second, the reason you should vote for me is this thing. And you can both do one of them if you want. I don't know if you want to write something down between the Zoom calls. But yeah,
Are you voting, Ben, or are you strictly impartial? Are you voting?
I think I've got to be impartial, but when this goes out, I might join one of my burner YouTube accounts and put loads of comments in.
So,
We are only talking about like this debate, right? We're not talking about actual politics because I'm definitely barred from politics because I'm not a registered sex offender. So I definitely think I'm banned from the House of Commons.
well, you're barred from the Tory party for certain.
Definitely the House of Commons and the House of Lords. That one, that's a glass house you don't want to be thrown from, isn't it? I bet you if I Googled sex offenders in both political parties, I bet you that are about parity. That's an interesting Google. I might make a video about it. I bet you they're about parity.
Might want to use an incognito window if you want to Google that.
Yeah. It was like the expenses scandal. Do you remember the expenses scandal? I'm pretty sure the only, let's say...
Well, I know that anyway, the party over the last 2 years.
I think 4 of them ended up in jail with Labour, weren't they? It's not like... This is my point is I hate the Tories, but Labour are no better. The idea that like one's a nicer party, they always say that, don't they? The nice party. What a load of bollocks. If you're interested in getting in the Houses of Parliament, you're probably one of the worst people on planet Earth. I think there is nothing moral about any of our politicians, any of them, regardless of the party. But anyway, that went off on a tangent.
I disagree.
We'll save that for another day.
Say what you think, Matt. Don't hold back, mate. Right, who's up next for policy number 3? I can't remember where we left off.
It's Matt, I think.
Cool.
Yeah, well, Matt went with well, essentially we agree on that one. We need to build more houses. So I'll skip over that one because he said he had that written down as well. Let's talk about cutting public spending then, because cutting public spending needs to happen, right? I don't think the argument anyone's going to make is that we need to spend more money on the public purse. Even Mark, who looks a bit shocked there, surely must realise that a nation that's in trillions of pounds worth of debt doesn't need to spend more, they need to spend less. I think that the idea that you can't run... people always say, right, you can't run a country like you run your household. And I disagree. I think the idea that we can just get into endless debt is lunacy. I think you've got no influence, you've got no real authority if you're just in debt to everyone all the time. So I think we need to get our finances back in the black. It's ludicrous that nearly every country in the developed world has got these enormous deficits and they're just happy. Look at the United States. It was like 10 trillion, 20 trillion, 30 trillion. The idea that you can just keep getting into more and more debt, I think is preposterous. I think we need to cut public spending, and I think I've got a plan to do it. I'm going to steal from Elon Musk here, who puts in a ruthless policy whereby he makes all of his managers nominate a single worst employee in their department. And they get binned. And I thoroughly support it. Having worked for the public sector when I left the Royal Marines and being astounded at how grossly incompetent and lazy 15, 20% of my co-workers were, I think you start there. they're just using it as a job creation scheme now to like sort of prop things up. When you've got people that are inefficient, they're not just costing you money and not doing any work. They're actually a drain on your morale. When you have a soldier that sucks, everybody starts calling them day sack because it means they've got to carry them everywhere. It's a real pain up the arse. And I'm sure, again, you'll have both had it, where you work on a team and there's someone there who's grossly incompetent and everybody hates them and everybody hates working with them because you inevitably have to take up the slack and you start doing all their work. So there's a hard conversation no British politician would have, is we need to hack and slash at the grossly inefficient, lazy, incompetent, any of the three or all three, name them all, aspects of our public sector. I'd do it by doing that, instigating cuts for the laziest and most incompetent ones, instigate bonuses for the ones who seem to be doing the most work and carrying the can, and then you could get zero coverage loss from your public sector and save money at the same time. Because if you, let's just say 1 in 10, let's say for every 10 public sector employees, one of them, the most awful one, gets binned, you would save tens of billions of pounds every year with zero loss in efficiency from the public sector. So that's just a win-win, the way I see it. What else would I do? Foreign aid is a bit of a misnomer, right? Everyone loves talking about that. The mega right-wingers love it because it's like, yeah, why are we still giving money to India when they've got a space program? It's a bit of a smokescreen because it's not that much money. I think it's 13 billion or something we give in foreign aid now. Who cares? But every little helps. Let's shave 3 off that. We'll keep that. Do something with it. Trouser 3 billion. Cut the public sector. Scrap the environmental levies, because if you can do basic mathematics, you know it's completely preposterous. And again, we're like, what, 1% of global emissions? And we've got this ridiculous situation where everybody's pandering to these climate activists. The argument every little helps doesn't make sense there either, because you've got like, to see people in Scotland saying, I've got to walk to the shops, me, good for the environment, when the Chinese are building 30 coal power plants in a month, is laugh out loud funny. Like, if you're affecting your quality of life negatively because you think you're helping by walking to the shops, you're a raving lunatic. So I think there's numerous things we've got to do to cut public spending and start to drag the deficit back down and hopefully, long term, actually get us back in the black. The idea that we can just keep spending money is ridiculous, and it wouldn't work in your house, so it doesn't work for your country. That's an easy one.
What do you think about public spending, Mark?
Well, I mean, I fundamentally disagree with most of the things that Matt's just said.
Oh, I could tell. I could tell.
I mean, when it comes to borrowing, I'm going to be a bit of a stuck record for this. We've just had 14 years of a Conservative government that has cut every single aspect of this country: council funding, potholes, every single part, police numbers, everything has been cut. That's all we've done over the last 14 years. But we've had the most corrupt government we have had in history, because you'd think with all that cutting, well, then eventually it might come to fruition, right? We'd be able to spend because we've cut so much. But the Tories have brought borrowing up to sky high. So the Tories have cut everything back and they've borrowed an insane amount of money, which is why we're in a crazy deficit. I mean, forget COVID and war in Ukraine. Just go back to 2019 now. Just ignore that. It was still the same then. So I understand that if we get a change of government, we've got a serious job to try and take that back. And government borrowing is out of control. But we have to start investing. Investing brings money back. If you invest in, say, if you clear up the homeless problem, if you get people off the streets back into work, they're tax-paying citizens, they're going to put back into the economy. If you invest in public transport, people to get in work on time, they're not missing days' work, they're paying into the economy. There comes a point you have to start investing to get money back. You can't just keep cutting and cutting and cut. We can't cut anymore. This country is on its knees because of 14 years of constant cutting public services. Council funding is the worst. Our councils, you've seen our high streets, you've seen our boarded up shops. It's just disgusting. It's like we're an old Eastern Bloc country right now. We have to start investing. And this. I mean, the household analogy is quite a good one in a way, because you can run a country like a household thing, but if something goes wrong, if your electric board goes wrong, are you going to put a sticking plaster on it, or are you going to borrow and actually sort out the whole problem? If you borrow and sort out the whole problem with the house, it will become fruition in the future. We can't go through another 10 years of cutting everything to the bone. This country is just on its knees. It is on its knees through cuts. We can't do it anymore. We've got to start investing. And I understand that we have to have a little bit of time of fiscal responsibility and try and balance the books a bit, but that comes into some of my other policies about taxation and things like that. But no, we cannot cut this country. I fundamentally disagree with that, Matt. I'm sorry, bud, but I do.
Yeah, I could tell by your face. Well, all I'll say is this, though. Have we actually cut? Because I've seen the UK public spending on the BBC website. I don't know when I read it, a couple of months ago. It's UK public spending has gone up every year from the last 10. So we haven't cut.
Yeah, but what is it going on, Matt? I think this is the thing. You have to understand the government that we've had over the last 14 years. It is the most corrupt government we have had. Those lucrative government contracts are going to Tory donors. Spending's maybe going up in certain areas, but who's that money going to? It's not going to councils. Councils have had their funding slashed to the bone. Police numbers since 2010. That's why we've got so much problems with crime. The police have been cut. I think it was about 200,000 since 2010.
So we haven't.
You have to put it in the
spending.
Concept.
You're saying we're spending on the wrong stuff.
Well, no,
we haven't cut spending. I'm certain of it. We have not cut public spending.
Well, I mean, I
gone
fundamentally disagree, Matt. I mean, the Tory party went on a pledge for 10 years of austerity, of cutting back, of balancing the books. I mean,
yeah, but only the deficit. Go on Google now and type in UK public spending, and it has gone up every single year for like the last 10. Rishi Sunak, when he gave his speech, said, "I'm very proud of our commitment to NHS spending." UK public spending's gone up. They haven't.
NHS spending. Yeah, I agree with that.
Everything's gone up.
Because of privatisation. The NHS has been slowly put into private hands. So the spending is going up. But this is what I'm talking about. You need to look at where it's going. The Tory party want to privatise the NHS. They're bringing spending up because more and more of it is being privatised, and it's going to companies that are getting those lucrative government contracts from the Tories. They fundamentally want the NHS to be private. They wouldn't be a Conservative party and want a socialist National Health Service. They want it in private hands. That's why they've slowly been destroying it from within.
Fair enough. What I'm saying to you is, it's incorrect to say we've cut public spending. If you want to, we can have a long argument about the gross incompetence of the Tory government and the corruption. Christ, I know about it. Reading about them giving these massive contracts to the mayor to start up Mickey Mouse companies and then get 200 million quid's worth of money to provide PPE. I know about that, but I'm saying it's incorrect to say we've cut, because we haven't cut, we've spent more. It's the same with the NHS. If you go on Google, I guarantee public spending has gone up.
I mean, you can bring up a graph from anything, but just look at the actual things that are going on. Council funding is obviously, which is the main thing which is affecting people in and around their towns and cities, has been cut drastically. I don't know. Well, you can produce a graph of some area where costing's gone up here or costing's gone up here, but we have had 14 years of decline and cuts in public spending.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, rather than get into an argument about it, we can simply say that we do agree. Whether or not spending's gone up or down, we need to do a better job of spending the money, which is what I talked about, right? Inefficiency, stupidity, waste. Whether or not it's gone up or down, we need to do a better job of how we spend our money. We can at least.
Yeah, well, that comes back to our agreement. We're in total agreement with that we have a government that is completely incompetent. I mean, that we 100% agree. Definitely.
So I'm just looking at the 10-year thing. There's not an awful lot of granular detail, but as of March 2025, we've spent 217 billion on pensions. We've spent 224 billion on healthcare. 108
this year, March.
This is 2025. Defense, 62 billion. We've got a random other spending, which is probably the Tories just laundering money.
Pornography.
Other spending is 207 billion, which is more than most of the things that I'm reading out. Protection, whatever the fuck that means, 45 billion.
I know 2024 was the most we've ever spent. It was over $1 trillion. It was like 1.2 trillion or something. On public spending. It's the most in history. So what I'm saying is, it's corruption and stupidity rather than we can cut. We can cut. We do things more efficiently. We can make things better and save money.
Streamline things.
Again, using a household analogy, it's like if you go and do your weekly shop in Waitrose and it comes to 150 quid, you can still feed the family if you go to Aldi and Morrison's and you'll spend 50 quid less. What I'm getting at is cutting needs to happen. It's incorrect to say that we've cut the shit out of public spending. We've spent more money. Like 2024, we spent far more money on public spending than we did in 2020. Just pulling that number out my ass. So we need to cut. And we agree that we... I mean,
I assume those stats are taken from COVID, right? With furlough and stuff like that, because that's... I mean, that obviously would send it out of control.
Possibly, but I know from seeing the graph on the BBC that it's never been cut. I mean, and again, you can say there's other things like the currency goes down, you've got inflation and stuff like that, but guaranteed from literally like 2005 to 2024, every single year, public spending has gone up. It's never been cut. Now, what you're saying, you might mean we've cut. I'm telling you.
It's never been cut. No, well, I just disagree, Matt. I couldn't disagree more. I mean, when you physically look at the thing, our schools are crumbling from the walls with lack of investment. Our towns and cities are boarded up. These funding have been cut. Mismanagement. I think we're on the same page here with mismanagement and a government that is corrupt and incompetent. But to say that we haven't cut, I mean, I think these figures that you're thinking of, that you've seen, are skewed with COVID. Obviously, with furlough and stuff like that, public spending will have gone through the roof.
We might be getting hung up on the meaning, right? So you might be meaning cuts to individual departments or something. And I'm just talking about the overall amount of money. You just take the amount of money.
But the things that matters, policing, education, council funding, the things that affects our lives has been drastically cut.
On a daily basis.
Yeah,
okay,
security.
Well, like I said, possibly. But if you look up the actual numbers...
Military spending as well. Military spending has gone down.
Yeah. Well, I mean...
Anyway. Shall we move on?
As I said, we can move on. It's fine.
Yeah, we're good. One day I'll have a proper podcast studio like Joe Rogan and we can both look at a screen and I can say, pull that up, John. And
we'll go in Texas.
Sorry, mate, I was asleep. Yeah, absolutely. Right. Who did that one? Was it Matt?
Yeah.
Public spending. Okay, so Mark, what other policies have you got? I think we've got 2 left.
So I mean, the main one, I mean, this should have been my number one, actually. I think we'll probably have some agreement with this one, Matt. I really think we will. It's basically a fundamental uphaul of the political system in the UK. 3 sort of major points that would encompass this, but the main one being the voting system. We have to get rid of the 2-party system. We share this system, first past the post, with America. Belarus, I think, is the other one, but every other country in Europe has a PR voting system. I don't know whether you know too much about the voting system, Ben, whether this is news to you, but our current one is incredibly undemocratic. So basically in Europe, if Reform, people like Reform Party at the moment, they're polling at about 10%. So in Europe, if you vote for a Reform Party, if 10% of the country votes for a Reform Party, they will get 10% of MPs in Parliament. It doesn't work like that in the UK. Reform will be lucky to get one MP in Parliament because we have this stupid first past the post system where we have little tiny elections scattered around the country, and you have to hope that a certain amount of people in your constituency share your views on reform to get someone elected. So I would straight away change the voting system to a proportional representation voting system, which is a much more fairer democratic system, and it gets all people's views involved. I've often said that the most democratic government that we could have in the UK that accompanies everyone's views, Matt's views, my views, would be like a centrist Labour Party or a centrist Conservative Party in a coalition with a sort of Nigel Farage style party and a Green Party, which represents the right. So they can push, Farage can go, I'm not too keen on this immigration stuff. The Greens can go, can we nationalise a few things? And they can have their input. But at the moment, we have this two-party system that everyone hates. Everyone hates the Tories, and that they hate this constant swing. And it's the same in the US with the Republicans and Democrats. So yeah, I mean, that would just be the start of the whole uphaul. But I would change everything about UK politics. MPs, one job, no second job. No MPs going off getting 100 grand to do a talk over here. If you're an MP, that's your job. You do that. You don't do anything else. I would take money out of the political parties. So at the moment, you can donate hundreds of millions to the Conservative Party and you can basically get your policy put through because you have money. I would have political parties funded by individual memberships, which is what... polarizing figure, but Jeremy Corbyn done with the Labour Party. You may necessarily don't like his politics, but that's how he funded the Labour Party when he was there. Individual membership. He got the membership up. Political parties should be funded by very small membership donations. And the House of Lords, I don't know whether you know too much about the House of Lords, Ben, but they're basically unelected folks that get to decide on policy. A lot of them are landowners, like your Downton Abbey style thing where you're a lord from passed on and you get the right to make decisions in Parliament just because you were popped out of the right vagina. I would get rid of that straight away, and I would, in its place, put in an elected House of Lords. But yeah, complete uphaul of the political system in the UK.
Cool. So I'm just going to interject here because I'm meant to be a moderator, but I do actually have an opinion on this. So I listen to a podcast quite a lot called the Blind Boy Podcast. It was a guy that was in a band called the Rubber Bandits. He's very, very successful, and his entire existence is podcasting and doing live podcasts. And he's got quite a strong political sway on things, and he's got quite a lot of influence. And he did a podcast recently about the largest lake in Ireland is run by in air quotes. It was inherited by some DJ that lives in New York. And he says the Irish lake that I'm talking about should be publicly owned. And apparently it's just completely going to shit. Like everything's just starting to die around the lake and everything's just gone to complete chaos because no one's actually looking after it because, So just my interjection here is asking a broad question, which is, should we still in 2024 be allowed to inherit property, valuable items, things that we kind of don't really have a fucking clue about because we've just inherited them? I just got a 5-bedroom house in Downing Street. Do you think we should change that, or should we? I
don't have a problem with inheritance. I mean, I'd have some opinions on how that's taxed, but I don't have a problem with inheritance. The thing that I have a problem is because you popped out the right vagina, you get a right to make policy in government without being elected. That's what I have a problem with. But I don't have a problem with inheritance. But like I say, I would heavily tax some of those things. But yeah.
See, Mark's much more reasonable than your mate, because your mate sounds like a bit of a loony. That's like full-on commie shit, right? Stealing inherited stuff. At the end of the day, right, we're all working class oiks. I almost entirely agree with Mark there. Like, yeah, you shouldn't be able to inherit like titles or anything at all to do with your intellectual capacity or roles and responsibilities. You shouldn't be able to inherit, because guess what? A high IQ, high-functioning chap can have a fucking idiot for a son. So I totally agree with you. That's what's wrong with monarchy, right? occasionally you get a good one, and the next thing he squirts out an absolute shit for brains, and you're all in trouble. So I totally agree that you should be able to inherit like titles and things where you have to do stuff. But the idea that you can't, think of this logically, right? The idea that you can't inherit a property or money off your parents is preposterous that you're going to try and end that, because this is what I always tell everybody. I am the working class oik in the street from the worst town in Britain who joined the military as a young man as a way out of poverty, basically. At no point do I want to side with the wealthy landowners. But what you don't understand when these like hopelessly optimistic, very, very left-wing people talk about things like that is you misunderstand the capacity for human nature, for spite and malevolence. And I've talked about this a lot, like, ever since I moved to the States and started making some money finally in my 40s, late 30s, 40s, I understand it because whenever I get an income tax bill, and it's massive in California, a little part of me gets annoyed and I think, they're probably about at the right level. Clever people figure out these levels, and they're at about the right level where they're still motivating you to produce and be productive and try and get the promotion. But if they just stuck another 20% on that, massive amounts of people, chippy northerners like me especially, but everybody else who has a bit of chippiness on them, would say, you know what, burn it all. I'd rather go on the dole, live off tap water and porridge, and give them nothing, because they're just taking the piss out of me. So I'll pay my taxes to a certain level, but if it got to a point where they're like, I'll tell you what, I'll just take 80% off you, I'd be like, well, all right, I'll go on the dole. I'm not doing it. I'm not driving a bus or stacking shelves or shoveling concrete for you to take most of my money off me. So there's clever people figure these income tax rates out, and it's what goes wrong in places like Venezuela. And the idea that you can take property off them, you have to be a lunatic, because I'll tell you what I'd do. I'd get to 80 and then I'd blow my house up or whatever. I'd set it on fire and invite all the neighbours round for a bonfire. The idea that you could just say, I'll tell you what, you die and all that stuff you worked hard for and you paid income tax every single year of your life. And think of all the people you help if you are mega hard-working, high-functioning, 70 hours a week every week because you want to provide for your children. All the income tax, all the thousands and thousands of kids you educate and the healthcare you pay for and the things you've provided. And if we just started saying, nah, we'll just take it all when you die, millions and millions of people would go, either A, I'm going to do as little work as possible, or B, I'll just set the house on fire.
Yeah.
So there needs to be common sense to that type of stuff.
Yeah,
I agree they shouldn't have the ability, because people can be idiots, to just take the reins from daddy. But you can't not let rich arseholes at least leave them. Yeah, tax them at a reasonable rate, maybe. Yeah, do that.
Well, I think the guy that Ben was referring to is a full-on communist. If he's the guy that I think he is from the Rubber Bandits, I think he is a full-on communist, isn't he?
You can't tell with a policy like that. And what I'm saying, your position's much more reasonable. Tax it, fair enough. You know, Mitt Romney got on that bandwagon over here, and the Americans, bless them, some of them are proper right-wing when they shouldn't be. And he was going, oh, no one should have to pay inheritance tax. And you've got all these plumbers cheering him on. And then you read about it, and the inheritance tax starts at like $10 million or something. And I'm like, you're never going to have enough money to pay this inheritance tax. So that type of thing, again, I'm definitely amenable to it. Yeah, you should have taxation, you should pay your fair share, but the idea you just take it all, it is lunacy. Like, I think, yeah, human nature would win out, and I would proper turn into a lazy bastard if I knew that I couldn't leave anything for the wife and kids, you know?
Yeah, fair enough.
Nature.
Just to cut in on my point about the lake, it's owned by a guy called the Earl of Shaftesbury, who's quite close to my area, Shaftesbury. He's called Nicholas Ashley Cooper, and he is a full-time DJ that lives in New York and has absolutely no plans to go over to Ireland. And he's actually willing to sell the lake to the public, but he wouldn't be giving it away as a charitable donation. So, I hear these things on podcasts and they kind of make me a bit angry. And then I go on my podcast and act like a bit of an idiot that's probably quite ill-equipped to actually talk about what I'm talking about. So, yeah, there we go.
Well, it's a reasonable point. I mean, he doesn't live there. He doesn't care about the lake, and he wants to charge them to take. It's annoying, but you just get into a murky world when you start taking property from people. That's the point.
Yeah, definitely.
It's a tough decision. But I would be interested in Matt's opinion on the voting system, though, what I was talking about, because obviously him in the US is the other country that shares the voting system that we have here.
Yeah. No, well, you know what? This is what I'm saying. You're obviously more reasonable than many on the left, because almost to the letter, because I did read it a couple of months back, Reform's manifesto. That's almost to the letter what they were talking about. Like Reform UK is like, get rid of the House of Lords, massively reform the voting system. They want proportional representation. I think any small party wants proportional representation. I don't think I disagree with any of it. Again, we are living in strange times. It's almost like the old left and right has sort of died in a way. And you've almost got mass populism, right? Jeremy Corbyn's a left-wing populist and Nigel Farage is like a right-wing populist. I think the dynamics changed because, what you were talking about was like almost, from what I recall, the UK Reform UK's manifesto when it comes to electoral reform. And I don't know.
Like I say, all the small parties want it. Labour and Conservative, first past the post suits them well. Exactly the same as the Democrats and Republicans. It suits them very well. They don't want to change it. You just constantly got chicken and egg. You can never actually change from it. The only way you could possibly get it is the next election in the UK if we get a coalition with the Lib Dems and Labour, because the Lib Dems will be pushing for it. And if when you're in a coalition, if they make their one single thing that they want to get through, changing the voting system, you could possibly have it on the horizon here in the UK.
Well, it wiped out the Lib Dems, didn't it? Because that rat, Nick Clegg, totally did the opposite of everything he said he was going to get his hands on the reins of power and be the deputy PM, right? Because, like, I think the really big one he signed off on was student fees. And the Tories came in and were like, how about we triple them? Clegg was like, let's do that then. So it killed the Lib Dems. I think him getting to be the deputy prime minister was the worst thing that could have happened for him.
Student fees killed him because that's what got him in power, because the students voted for him. But the thing is with Clegg, that he could only push for one policy really to get in with the coalition. And he did do, I don't know whether you were in the UK in 2011, but there was actually a referendum on the voting system in 2011.
I remember
which is the one thing that Nick Clegg, that's basically the one policy that he went to the Tories and said, I have to have this. If we're in a coalition, I have to have this. And it got dumbed down. It wasn't for PR, it was for rank voting. It was.
I moved to the States in 2014, I think. I've been here about 9 or 10 years, and I was there for that. I remember because I remember thinking David Cameron stitched him up like a kipper.
He did. Absolutely.
He's a weasel, David Cameron, and he's probably more cunning and weaselly than Clegg because he stitched him up there. He said, you be the deputy PM, support us, we'll give you your referendum. And then he watered down the PR system and then launched a mass campaign helped by all of his chums so that everybody was against PR. And for my sins, I think at the time I probably was, right? I guess nearly, over 10 years ago now, I probably wasn't that interested in what was going on. I just remember reading the BBC and the papers and being like, it says here that only tin pot dumps have proportional representation. So, probably. Who cares? And that was David Cameron just running rings around Nick Clegg. That stitched him right up.
Yeah, completely agree.
Fair enough. Right, we're running out of time on this one as well. So I think we've got one last policy to go on. And then we're going to have like a little soundbite of why you should be in charge. And
I've still got 2 more policies here.
You still got 2 more? We'll do 2 more.
I think we both should have 2 more.
What he's doing is he's doing 5 in total, isn't he? Because we probably haven't got time for 5 each. So.
Oh, okay.
I see. All right.
Let's try that again.
Oh, Alexa's having a go. Hello, Alexa. How are you? Just conscious of Matt's time because he sent a message in the group chat yesterday saying that he can't stick around for the entire thing. So just to recap, we've spoken about immigration and open borders. We've spoken about housing and is it affordable in the UK. We've spoke about economy, tax and cutting of public spending. We've spoken about 2-party systems, voting and how the government actually works. So that's 4. But we could probably fit another one in if you want to go for another 2. But we'll join the next Zoom meeting and we'll get on that. And then we'll let you have the floor, both of you. And if there's anything that you guys want to promote and all that sort of stuff on your YouTube channel, then now's the time. But yeah, we'll join the next meeting and we'll go from there. All right.
Cheers,
Cool.
mate.
Do you need that extra burst of energy? Do you need motivation? Do you need that X factor? Well, Go Energy has you covered. Whatever gets your juices flowing. Whatever you need to let your hair down. Have a go at it all with Go Energy. Gluten-free, vegan-friendly, and no artificial additives. Go Energy. Use code Bedlam10 at checkout.
And we're back again. So, I'm really bad at keeping score as to who's spoken about what. I do apologise. We've spoken about 4 things. Mark, did you have 2 more? And Matt, did you also have 2 more?
I think it's Matt's turn, isn't it? I think.
Okay.
Mark's just, Christ, I'm better at moderating than you, Benjamin. I should be doing that job.
First day.
You can argue with him. Right, well, he's just covered reform of the House of Commons and the House of Lords, electoral reform. And basically we didn't disagree. So I'll do a last one. I'll pick on the police and justice, seeing as we've done all the other big ones. I think it's not beyond the realms of possibility to suggest that the vast majority of British people at this point feel like the justice system has completely failed. It isn't working. And I'm going to basically steal the policies of Peter Hitchens, because I've been listening to him on social media for the last few years, and I think no one man has talked more sense about British justice than Peter Hitchens, and he wrote a book about it. Essentially, it ain't working anymore, and the reason it isn't working is down to some quite obvious things. Again, I am parroting him to some degree, but it just makes sense. So his first big thing he talked about is the fact that we need beat bobbies, proper beat bobbies again, because they just stopped doing it. And it's a great idea. We went from hiring ex-paras and ex-bootnecks to be coppers, and went from insisting that everybody had a degree and hiring little, short, fat women to essentially deal with the worst people in society. And I understand with all of the managerial elites thinking that you can just do cunning machinations and make the world as you see fit. But again, as with to my last point, talking about understanding the base nature of human beings, the idea you can apply that type of stuff to policing, I think, is absolutely ludicrous. We can get behind the idea that women should be liberated to work in professional careers and stuff, or we should have more representation in the boardrooms and all things like that. And even that I'm on board with the left on. Because if you really want to maximise your output, your taxpayers, you emancipate women, you get them working. It's good for society to have educated women. But the one aspect of that should be immune should be anything to do with personal safety. So things like the police department and the fire department, they should still have rigorous fitness standards, because you're either carrying fat blokes down ladders on burning buildings or tangling with machete-wielding lunatics. And I can't believe that the so-called elites have applied the same sort of policies towards things that directly involve being forced to deal with dangerous apes, which is human beings. Dangerous apes with sharp implements. And we've started doing that. And I've got mates who are in the police force mercifully on their way out, saying it's a shambles. There's nobody in the police force now who is, can do 10 pull-ups and run a 6-minute mile. It's completely gone the way of this managerial elite, as if you can somehow managerize your way out of a machete attack or something. I think it's ludicrous, and we need to once again go back to the policies from the sort of 80s and the early 90s. There should be rigorous fitness standards applied to these new recruits. If you can't pass the BFT, you get binned. You get binned. They did it in the military. If I failed my BFT when I was a Royal Marine at a commando unit, you got 3 months remedial PT, and if you failed it, you got slung out. That should be in place for the police and the fire departments. We need to have rigorous standards, and that will help fix policing. It'll bring trust from the public back. What else? That's just the boots on the ground. You need to get automatic life imprisonment for repeat violent offenders. This is called the broken windows policy, this type of stuff, what Rudy Giuliani did in New York, and it worked. Yeah. It worked. We've got evidence that it works. Again, I do not view this as a left versus right issue. I think the woke, loopy, sort of managerial, the world can be however you want to make it types are a bit crazy, and I think the normal old school left would agree with this type of stuff. Very, very left-wing people in council estates in the northeast of England aren't sitting there going, oh yeah, but let's talk about his feelings and emotions, the machete-wielding lunatic. They're like, hit him over the head and lock him in a cell. I don't think this should be a right versus left issue. And I think you can sort the police problem out like that by having rigorous standards. Start recruiting from the military again. This was some gobbledygook that came up with in the noughties saying like, oh yeah, but military people are going to be damaged, so we don't want them on the streets. It's like, it's just wrong. I went to war 5 times. I'm not a very, very bad-tempered person. I have an Angry Bootneck channel for comical effect, but I'm generally quite a put-together person emotionally. It takes a lot to make me flip out, and I think men that have been through the rigors of training that was very, very difficult have been conditioned to deal with violence, and they're less likely to freak out and start shooting people. I'd be very surprised if you find out these bobbies in America who go mental because they panic, because they're scared, and just start shooting into a crowd. They're not Navy SEALs. They're not people who've been trained to deal with violence. It's the exact opposite. So that was an incorrect premise that violent men are the worst type of aspects for police officers. I think it's wrong, and I think we should start reinstitute prioritising applications from former military and making rigorous standards apply to the police force. I'd pull the College of Policing apart. It appears to have been aggressively politicised. And I'd massively deal with the basics of policing, stop and search, anything. I'd try and make it colourblind. I'd get rid of the political aspect, and I'd increase the training and the standards of the rank and file police force. I think the justice system is broken in Britain, and it starts at the very, very bottom there.
What do you reckon with that, Mark? That was a lot.
Yeah, policing actually touches on one of my points, so that's good there. So we can go in on them together. Some things I agree with, some things I don't. Definitely Bobby's on the beat, 100%. I mean, I go back to cuts again. We've had our police numbers cut severely over the last 14 years. I get those numbers back on, and yes, I totally agree with Bobby's on the beat. We should definitely. I think the majority of the country does. This is the stupid thing. We have these sort of policies the majority of people agree with that never actually get done. Yeah, policing numbers back up. My main thing with policing is I want police to focus on violent criminals. The problem that we have with prisons and policing is caught up with the drug war. Definitely so in the US. I mean, it's one of the biggest problems in the US. It's a big problem here in the UK as well. I would take the drug war away from police. Let the police focus on violent criminals. All of their attention can go on murderers, rapists, violent criminals, getting them put in prison. The drug war for me, drugs is a mental health issue for me. Okay, you don't just start shooting heroin because you woke up one day and thought that would be fun. These people are mentally scarred. They've been through trauma. It needs to be under the umbrella of the NHS. I'd go down the route of Portugal that are decriminalising drugs to get the police focus away from people that have just got possession of drugs to put them on serious violent criminals. But overall, I mean, this is where I understand that I am a long way away from most people's opinions on this, but I would be moving towards legalization, definitely with marijuana straight away. Why are we handing over a multi-billion-pound industry to criminals when we can tax it, regulate it, put that back into the economy? People are going to smoke weed. They have for decades. Okay, just the fact that it's criminal, it's illegal, is not going to stop there. But I would even move forward. It would take a while we're talking like a 10-year process here, starting with decriminalisation. But I would put drugs completely under the umbrella of NHS, and I would legalise everything. And I would, all that money that comes back into the NHS goes into helping people get off drugs and educating kids away from drugs. You're never going to stop people taking drugs. And it just seems pointless to me that we just hand this multi-billion-pound industry over to criminals to run that causes us so much problems, causes us so much money to police, and so many people that get caught up in the middle of it. Gang violence, knife crime, everything is all mainly because of the drug war, and it just seems completely avoidable. But yeah, I know that's quite an extreme view for most people, and most people completely disagree with me, and I completely understand that. But yeah, policing in general, focus on violent criminals and move away from the drug war would be my opinions.
Okay.
I think there's a lot of good things there, but it's something I don't think's been, because I'm an ENTP. I love, there's nothing sacred to me. There's no sacred cows. I think you should be able to argue about everything, right? You know, chippy atheist since I was a teenager, and I love arguing about anything that's received wisdom. I like to poke at it and say, is it though? You know, so I don't think that's a mega controversial thing to say. What I'd say is I've never been able to make my mind up on it. Whenever someone gives a fantastic oration about why we should legalize drugs, I'm always sitting there watching it on YouTube or something going, shit, that makes loads of sense. And then the
reason it's difficult is because it's a choice between two shit options. They're both shit options. That's why it's hard, because drugs are shit. They corrupt people. They're horrible things, but you have the choice of them being legal or being illegal. They're both horrible options. That's why it's always a to and fro. So I sympathize with you.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I really have thought about it a lot, and I don't see anyone winning the argument. Every time I think someone's done a slam dunk, I'll read something about it or a piece from some very, very stuffy. I mean, again, talking about Peter Hitchens because I love him. He's proper.
I agree with a lot of his stuff. Peter Hitchens for me is one of those guys that I vigilantly disagree with on some things and vigilantly agree with on others.
Yeah.
And this is one of them, actually. I know he's very, very anti-drugs and will throw you in prison for the rest of your life for having possession of them.
Well, that's why he's good though, isn't he? Because he's likeable. He's a crotchety old bastard, and you can't help but like him. And I'm the same. I probably agree and disagree with him a lot. So when I hear a slam dunk for legalizing drugs, I think that's good, that. And then I listen to him going on about it for 10 minutes. I'm like, that's kind of good as well. I think you are right. It's a very, very difficult. Some things, humans like to tell ourselves that we can fix every problem. And I don't think we can. And some things you can think about and talk about till the cows come home, and you won't get to a perfect solution. So what I'm saying is I'm not vehemently opposed to the idea because I've heard good arguments for it, but it's definitely not being solved. I've heard good arguments either way. I've heard negative aspects of it as well. And I do not know what the solution is. Certainly there are places in the world, to be the counterpoint, where they have a ruthless approach to it and they are nice and the addiction rates are low, like Singapore or somewhere.
Singapore's
but at the same time, the Netherlands, like every Middlesbrough teenager goes straight to Amsterdam when they're 18. It's like we all go with our mates on a bus.
My son went 6 months ago. He's 18.
Yeah. And I had a great time, and it's nice. So, yeah, I can see both sides of the argument. I really don't see how you're going to solve it. Certainly not in my lifetime. And you're definitely not going to get any of the mainstream UK parties are going to do it. There's no way. Kia's not going to come in and be like...
No, because it's a vote killer.
Yeah.
That's the problem. Pensioners are the biggest demographic for voting, and the two main parties will not touch that because pensioners will not go for that. It's not a vote winner. This goes back to the voting system. You know, our two parties, they focus where they can win votes rather than everyone. It'd be interesting your opinions on that, Ben, actually. You got an opinion on legalizing drugs?
I don't do drugs at all. I've never, ever done anything, but I do think the idea of a UK election on the 20th of April could be quite funny. I don't know. It just feels a bit... I don't really have a leg to stand on just because I don't do it.
Don't have a dog in the fight.
I think it's important to have people that have potentially seen the pitfalls and potentially seen the benefits of doing it. But
I think Mark's definitely right about it being trauma, right? Because there's almost nobody who's like life's amazing, fit and healthy, and they're just like, I think I'll get ripped to the tits on wobbly eggs and smack. It's just something that doesn't happen. I think that's right, and you should.
Well, it's to the extreme. It's to the extreme in America. Have you ever seen those videos of is it Kensington Avenue in Philadelphia of all the people on fentanyl, just absolute zombies? You know, why are we doing this to our citizens? These people need help. They're not criminals. They're mentally ill. They need help, and then you've just got the criminals that are just feeding off them. This is the thing. What I was saying, it's the option. It's the two options between two shit options. You either have drugs that are legal, and you worry about your kids, and there's legitimate reasons to be worried about that sort of scenario where drugs are legal, or you have what we have right now, where we have criminal gangs knifing each other in London, fighting over territory, and getting insanely rich over making people like those folks into zombies on the streets on fentanyl. You know, it's the choice between two shit options. I just think one is slightly less shit. I just think having drugs available to kids is bad, but if all that investment we get from selling drugs goes into education, goes into helping our kids, telling our kids do not touch this stuff, it's horrible, and tight regulation on it as well. You can't just go into a club and start shooting up heroin in the corner, you know, same as drugs and smoking in public areas and stuff like that. You have very tight regulation on it. I just think that's the slightly better option out of the two. But I mean, that is what's fueling the majority of our violence in London, you know, especially in America. Jesus Christ, the inner cities, Baltimore, Jesus Christ, you know, these places are war zones because of the drug the drug game.
Yeah, well, I mean, you would knew with the cartels, wouldn't you, if all of a sudden the US government was selling it all? I don't think the Mexican cartels have any work left to do, would they?
Do you think in a couple of generations from now we'll be able to have more of a sort of appropriate conversation with drugs because all of the elderly people will be in the ground? Or do you think the cycle will just continue and it will just be this thing that no one's ever going to touch because it's just not worth it?
No, I think you make a very good point, Ben. I think you make a very good point. I think the kids, we mock the kids a lot, you know, with their crazy woke stuff and that, but they're switched on to modern society, social media, and drug. I think they'll surprise us in the end. I'm an optimistic of the future. I know a lot of people are very, very, very pessimistic, but I'm not.
You know what's funny? They definitely wipe the cartels out because we Americans are competitive. We do the best shit. No one would want Mexican cartel cocaine if they could get primo all-American cocaine. You should see the ganja out here. Like, I very rarely do drugs. I did as a young teenager, but not. As soon as I started training to join the Corps when I was like 18, I really screwed the nut because I mega wanted to do it. And I've really been clean of them since. But I suppose a few times ever since I moved out here, because ganja is everywhere in California since they legalized it. There's dispensaries all over the place, probably like 3 in my town. And I was at a party and they were like, oh, do you want to try some ganja? And I was like, no, I'm not really into it. I said, like, smoking, I don't like smoking either. And they're like, no, but this is just pure weed. It's not like when I was a kid. We used to always snap a fag in half, put it in a spliff and then crumble some tack in. So it was like 90% tobacco. They were like, no, this is just weed. Like, have a puff. You probably quite like it. So I took like 2 drags on this spliff. And I was fucking wrecked for about 6 hours. Like, the ganja they make nowadays compared to the shit that we used to have in the 90s. Because in the 90s, it all had to come smuggled, majority from the Netherlands and Morocco and places like that. And it was always hash. So I noticed that like 99% of the ganja I smoked when I was 14, 15 was tack, because it's for smuggling. And out here, it's always bush, comes in a big bag, grass. And it's unbelievably strong. So I would say they'll probably refine it to a terrifying amount if they started legalizing it. Because the shit over here is unbelievable. It's nothing like I was used to going with.
Just to tie this into a nice bow, and then we'll let you promote your stuff afterwards. I've always voted ever since I've turned the legal age to vote. But I'm 34, and unfortunately, I share the same belief as what Russell Brand used to share, which was, I'll vote, but I won't necessarily see the change that I want. And that obviously makes people not vote. And sometimes that can be quite tricky to see, because even the idea of me having to get into my car now and drive to a polling station to vote feels like effort. Like, I'd quite happily vote online and not leave my house if I could. But
Well, you can do a postal vote. But...
yeah, it just, I don't know, the whole thing just feels like effort.
But even that's faff, filling out the form. You got to show your ID now. Fucking ID.
Yeah.
No.
But yeah, I will still continue to vote. I just think, like you said earlier, Mark, the whole fucking system is just absolutely outrageous. And I'm not seeing much progress from my perspective as a 34-year-old white person in the UK. I don't think it does anything. But it doesn't mean you shouldn't vote. I'm not trying to create a YouTube channel to propagandize not voting. But yeah, so we're going to do a 30-second sort of thing just to say why you should vote for Mark and why you should vote for Matt. So I'll let you both decide who goes first on that, and then afterwards you can promote your YouTube channels, and I'll let you go and carry on with your days.
Okay, I'll start if you want.
Go for it.
Well, but basically, essentially, what I want to say is, I think me and Matt, like I said, we want the same things. I don't think we're essentially that far apart politically, anyway. I mean, I don't like this left and right spectrum. It seems to be skewed so much, anyway. I mean, left and right used to be economic before. You know, far left you'd be a communist, or far right you'd be a free market capitalism. That used to be what it is. But now it's just like whether you're woke or anti-immigrant or so. These left-right labels are silly to me. And like I say, I think me and Matt generally want the same things. We want a country that is safe for our children, with job prospects, and just be happy, just an equal playing field. And that everything that I've put forward is what I feel would best bring an equal level playing field. That's what I want. I want equality, and I don't want the rich to trample over the poor. And human nature, you can't fight human nature. That's what happens. The strong will always rise above, but we need to try and balance the playing field as much as possible, and that's what my policies will do with nationalisation, education, and that. But I think we want the same things. We generally want the same things. We just go slightly different, I guess, about getting those things.
Style.
But yeah, vote for me.
Yeah. What about you, Bootneck?
Well, like I said, I'm not running for any office because I'm not a sex offender. I will say that it's correct to say that we aren't as different as you'd think, because, which is a point I've made for several years. I think the left-right dynamic has gone, and you've replaced it with, well, it's a new era we're living in. Social media seems to have changed the game. The politicians haven't kept up with that. They still think they can fly to a blue state and say one thing, and then fly to a red state the day after and say the exact opposite, and nobody's going to find out about it. I think the times have changed and the dynamics have changed. The paradigms have changed. The left versus right thing is very different. But I think ultimately we can get rid of the word populism as a dirty word, because to me, a lot of the policies the popular left come out with now is populism. It's left-wing populism versus right-wing populism, and essentially it's this gigantic blob of working-class people who want to see the same stuff and have slightly different means of getting there. As I said, I was surprised how much I agreed with Mark on, but I definitely can't get on board with the idea that we should be spending more money, or nationalisation is the key to all our wars. But again, after talking out, I don't think he's saying that for doing it en masse. I'd say my policies are probably, I genuinely believe that the stuff I believe is shared by the vast majority of working class people in the UK. And I think we have to get rid of this managerial elites who've decided what we can and we can't talk about. Because if you really get into the weeds with the stuff that we talked about today, I think almost all normal working class people who are worried about the future for their wives and the children and their ancestors are almost on the same page. We want to get back to basics. As I said, think of it as running your house. We want to make sure that we're solvent, that our security's in place, that people can feel safe when they walk in the street or walking to work, and that they're not going to get the piss took out of them by a load of rich people who don't pay the taxes but make damn sure you pay yours. Yeah. So yeah, I think we get rid of the big parties, and at least we can probably all agree on that. I think it's time for them to go the way of the dodo, and maybe proportional representation is a good way to achieve it. I'll reluctantly serve in some sort of role, but definitely not in one of these big parties. I think they all need to go the way of the dodo, definitely.
Cool. Right. So check out Man Talks. Mark from Brighton. Always uploading frequently, aren't you, Mark? And always got something to say.
Well, definitely with an election in a couple of weeks' time, I'll be uploading pretty much every day. It should be some spicy content.
Yeah.
Some interesting comments in the comment section. It should get fun. So yeah, check it out.
The one thing I loved about your most recent video, I don't know if it's most recent actually at time of recording, but there was a bit where you're driving along Brighton Pier and all of a sudden there's horse shit in the road and you just completely just start talking about it. And then like the video ends and you've got like a headline on the screen, and I just love how
That's the thing. When you're
it went
driving,
from so serious to so like, oh shit, what's happened here?
Things are happening all the time in Brighton.
Yeah.
And there's always interesting things that pop up on our videos.
I love it. Keep it coming. And be sure to check out Angry Bootneck, Matt. Are you still doing frequent live streams, or have you moved towards more uploads?
Generally, I do a live stream on a Saturday once a week, and then typically it's uploads. Because I work full time, so it's quite hard to. And this is America, where full time is typically 40 odd hours a week, not 30 odd. So I work quite a lot of long hours. But cool. No, I do it. I try and do once a week, and then upload short videos when I get the chance. Yeah,
your live streams are quite dynamic, and I see a lot of people talking in them. So as long as you can get through it at a rate of people messaging you and you can read it, then they prove to be quite fluid.
That's YouTube banning me constantly playing that game, because I get literally I think the most I've had in a live stream is about 800. I get more people in a live stream than channels who've got 300, 400,000 subs.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird. I suppose that means I've got a small but devoted audience.
Yeah.
And so I'll keep doing it. I've got no plans to quit.
Awesome.
Maybe they'll throw me off.
Yeah, I've had the ban as well from YouTube.
Yeah, well, again,
it gets to everyone.
We've got a lot in common then.
Something to look forward to for me then. Hey! Awesome. Yeah. Right, well, it's been lovely speaking to you both. I'm going to leave you to it. But yeah, definitely check out these guys on YouTube. I'll put the links below, guys. And thanks for watching. And always feel free to put stuff in the comments, open discussion, and also let us know exactly what policies you agree with in terms of Mark or Matt. Bootneck versus Man Talks, and I'll probably put a video up once I've counted the votes. So please vote below. Don't start fucking slagging each other off in the comments, please. And it's YouTube, innit? It's the fucking Wild West. But try your best to be nice to people in the comments, all right? There we go. Dad over. Right, cheers for watching, guys, and speak to you soon. Cheers.
Absolute Bedlam.
Hey guys, it's John here from Absolute Bedlam. We just wanted to take a moment to introduce you to our brand new Patreon. If you head over to Patreon now, you can get access to behind the scenes footage, ad-free content and episodes. You can even send your own requests in terms of the content you would like to see us create. All of this is available to you and more. We've got free options available to you as a patron with us. If you just want to support what we do and help build the Absolute Bedlam experience, a small fee of £1 a month, you can do just that. If you want to get access to that ad-free content, those ad-free episodes, for £5 a month, you can join the Hive. And if you want all of that and more behind the scenes footage, commission works with us, live Q&A sessions, for £10 a month, all of the madness, all of the chaos of Absolute Bedlam will be yours. So head over to Patreon now, become a patron, and join the Hive.
Absolute Bedlam podcast. Who? What? Where? Why?